this question.
I remember that indeed.
You do, don't you? Yes, every single question. So I'm going to ask you the same question again, but see if I get a different answer. At the time I asked you this question, you said Kinder was your answer. If you could novelise a story from the old series, what would it be and why, and how would you expand on the story?
It's still Kinder.
It's still
from
Kinder.
the old series, yeah. Because Terence did what his job is, which was to do a very straightforward. But there's so much material, there's so much stuff to play around with. You could do an adult-sized book of Kinder. You could do a 100,000 word novel. Again, not something that anybody's ever going to do, but that would be worthwhile.
Yeah. Excellent. So it's not changed in 10 years, which is
I'm
pretty good. Yeah. Consistent.
Absolutely.
Consistent. Fantastic. You've answered this one before, so Christopher Eccleston, you didn't know that he was cast before you wrote Father's Day. Did again, similar sort of question to the one about Richard D. Grant. Was it a generic Doctor again, or was it?
No.
Was it based on the script of Rose?
Yes, it was Russell's script. We're based on him.
Yeah. Excellent. And were you obviously you were given, when you wrote Father's Day, you had the script of Rose to work off. Were you allowed to add your own elements to the Doctor, or did you have to work from the character guidelines?
There were no character guidelines. There was a series format that Russell had done, which gave 2 or 3 lines about what each episode would be. And we all got that before we knew which we would be writing. But we all guessed quite accurately which we would be writing. There's one set in Charles Dickens' time with Charles Dickens. I thought that's Mark, and I just saw it's the one with no special effects or monsters. Our Play for Today episode, High on Emotion, where the Doctor meets, where Rose goes back to meet her dad, sees him being killed in a car accident over and over, and the Doctor talks to Pete Tyler's friends and finds out what a lovely man he is. I thought, oh God, that's me, and. It's not. I was the one who said, let's see what happens if she stops this happening. And let's do a take on that Star Trek episode, City at the Edge of Forever. City at the Edge of Forever?
Yeah, it's one with John Collins.
Yes. Yeah. But it kind of goes in the opposite direction to that. And I was nearly faced with the prospect of doing a Doctor Who episode, maybe the only one I'd ever do, with no monsters. It's kind of like a terrible shaggy dog story end to my life. You know, it's the thing I've always wanted to do, and I don't get any monsters. So I wanted some monsters, and I plonked them in very quickly. At that point, nobody thought this was going to be a success. On the night before Rose, you could have got good odds on Ant and Dec winning that slot. They were the favourites. And Russell, in his wildest dreams, wanted 6 million. That would have been huge. 10 million changed everything. It was an earthquake across the BBC. And he called me after that and said, they'll remember tonight, Paul, because in 40 years this means somebody will be able to bring it back again. That's the distance of his thinking, because it changed things so much. The BBC had assumed that the family audience didn't exist anymore. To find there were 10 million of them out there, that's a sea change. I had been told, now, don't feel bad if by the time we get to your episode, we're not on BBC One in prime time anymore. That's why the Dalek is in episode 6, because he thought that if it did fail, they would at least stick around on a Saturday night until the Dalek arrived. 10 million. We were just blown away. We were amazed. The whole BBC was amazed. I mean, that's why we're now living in this post-Russell universe, where I can go into Impossible Pictures, the guys who make the effects for Walking with Dinosaurs, who've now become an independent production company, and they will say things to my pitches like, well, we were hoping for something a bit more fantastical with more special effects, really. This never used to happen. And the love that dare not speak its name has come into the light. In the old days, you go into the BBC and people would hide their Buffy figures in drawers and bring them out after a while going, are you one of us? Are you? Do you have one of these? Oh, you don't? Oh, sorry. And these days, you know, you're required to have a Doctor Who poster on your wall and to say, yes, I've been a fan ever since the days when Peter Cushing was the Doctor. Yes. And of course, over at LWT at the same time, where I used to go and visit Judy Gardner and pitch stuff to her, we'd schedule meetings so we'd get to spend the first hour talking about last night's Buffy. You know, over there, it was not because this was the culture she had put into place at LWT, that was not a dirty word. Fantasy was regarded as a mainstream thing. The BBC hadn't got that until Russell kept saying, I won't come over and work with you on anything until you give me Doctor Who. It was when he finally turned down the Canterbury Tales and said, I won't do one of those unless you give me Doctor Who, that they started taking him seriously. I'm sorry, I've now done about 4 of my regular anecdotes back to back in kind of 12-inch megamix. And I turned around and they were all wearing eye patches.
Let's get that one in.
I once went to a convention where a wonderful fan called Alec Charles surprised Nicholas Courtney by keeping him talking to his face and interview on stage. And thus, when they turned back to the audience were all wearing eye patches.
Wonderful stuff. Like you're saying, BBC have recaptured the family audience. I mean, having stuff like Doctor Who, Robin Hood now on at 7 was inconceivable 2 or 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
And it really has.
Life on Mars,
Yeah.
Jekyll, Moffat's new Jekyll, post-Watershed full-on horror. I've just seen 6 minutes of it. Oh, it's good. Jimmy Nesbitt. Original feeling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm doing it again, aren't I? Original Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Modern era. As in the book, Dr. Jekyll is the handsome debonair. No, Mr. Hyde is the handsome debonair version of Dr. Jekyll that he turns into when he drinks his potion. Only he will do anything. It's very, very scary. And Jimmy Nesbitt is playing it with just a little bit of makeup to make him more glamorous as Mr. Hyde. It's terrifying. It's very funny as well. It's like a full-on Stephen King novel. It's Moffat just becoming this horror writer. It's gorgeous.
Is that going to be getting, BBC One?
Yeah,
slot?
BBC One
Fantastic.
post-Watershed.
Look forward to that one.
But anyway, all sorts of fantasy projects all
Yeah,
over the place.
it was inconceivable even 2 years ago. It was inconceivable. It's just reawakened.
And of course, I'm pitching my own Saturday night.
Yeah, can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, I've been commissioned to script, like every third writer in Britain has, for my own Saturday night family audience Doctor Who slot show. It's called Super. It's a superhero show. It's 4 girl superheroes who all have glasses they don't need that they can pull off, and it's running into phone booths and pulling open your shirt and being a superhero. And it's with Diedrich Santa, who just produced Jane Eyre and has now become the boss of EastEnders, so he's moved up in the world, and we have some high hopes. I'm going to talk about it next week. It's just commissioned to script. They've just paid me for a script. Let's hope it happens. But as I say, every writer on the planet is after one of those.
So can I go back to Founders Day if you don't mind?
Sure, do.
That's lovely.
I'm sure they'd like me.
You were saying you were given a sort of a couple of line outline by Russell of what he wanted. Were you then given free rein to expand on that how you wanted, or was there editorial control?
Oh, there's an editorial process. It's a team game. You're not allowed to run off and do what you like. You are to some degree. You run off, you do what you like, you bring it back, and then you discuss it and you work with it. All sorts of. We went all round the houses because back in season 1, nobody knew what this was going to be like. It was originally set in a pub because I thought we were going to be kind of enclosed here, and that was the one thing we all did as new writers on televised Doctor Who. We all wrote it 2 men in a lift, and Russell kept saying, "No, make it bigger. We've got some budget. Don't think of it as 2 sets." And we kept being told bigger, 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 smaller. Okay, smaller. And apart from Moffat, of course, who starts off with roses hanging from a blimp in the middle of the. When you see that, trailer and the fires of the Blitz down below, that's actually money they're throwing into those fires. It's the best way to make a fire on television.
So when the budget grew, is that where the monsters came from? Because you said it was always going to be monsterless.
It was going to be monsterless until I put monsters in absolutely the first draft.
Yeah.
Because I just wasn't going to do a Doctor Who story without monsters.
And were you in on the Bad Wolf thing?
No. What I said to Russell when I noticed Bad Wolf cropping up in other scripts, would you like me to put a Bad Wolf reference into this script? And he went, "Oh, yes." And that was it.
That was it.
I was hoping to hear what that might be.
What would the Bad Wolf reference have been?
It was in there. There's some Bad Wolf graffiti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't in the dialogue?
No,
not in the dialogue, right. I see. Excellent. Now, it's quite a rose-centred story.
Yes.
Were you asked to make it rose-centred, or did it naturally evolve that way?
I think it's the nature of the pitch. It's there was some thought for a while that this was going to be the one where Chris could have a bit of a holiday, because they were looking for a script which wouldn't be so Chris-centric.
Yeah.
And there is some of that in that he's swallowed up towards the end. He really does have a lot of screen time in the end. Well, that was, again, I had no monsters, I wasn't going to have much of a doctor. I thought, wow. But, they may never invite me back. That would be a terrible end.
This is the standard question that everyone you're bound to get asked. Eccleston or Tennant? Who's the easiest, or who's the most enjoyable, or who's the whatever to write for?
Splendid chaps, both of them. There are reasons people answer the questions like this. It's because they are completely different. It's you wouldn't really be able to compare actors.
Right. Another standard question that people always get asked: favourite stories from first of all the old series and then the new series, and reasons.
Old series Horror of Fang Rock, because it's a masterclass in structure. It's near perfect. And it's written very swiftly by Terence to fill a need. But he does what a good writer does. He finds a small researchable item. He constructs character paths to demonstrate every bit of that item. There are two MacGuffins. There's the lighthouse, there's the diamonds. He puts the lighthouse together with the diamonds and zaps the enemy. He gets you interested in all manner of characters. He plays you along with who might live and who might die. He makes you like one of the guys who's going to die enough so that when he dies it really feels weird. And he leaves you with everything wrapped up with a little bow on top. It's Sinatra. It's incredible. You look at that and you boggle. New series, Love and Monsters. I think it's Russell's full-on drama voice. Russell restrains himself on Doctor Who a lot, I think. He is always aware that he wants to keep those 8 million viewers. And so he doesn't let himself go and do certain things I think he would be glorious to see him doing. And Love and Monsters, I don't know why, it just sounds pure Russell to me. And it's serious drama, it's very human, and that ending, if it is a metaphor about life in fandom, life as a fan, that ending is so radical. You've got a show being shown to a mainstream audience which ends with, this life of ours, this life as a fan, it may be more dangerous and it's an outsider life. You don't get the comforts of mainstream life, but it's better. I'd be amazed to see that on Veronica Mars. The life of fandom is better. It's a tremendous, tremendous episode. Yeah.
Yes, there's without a doubt Love and Monsters. And it doesn't really matter that the Doctor's hardly in it either.
No, not at all. Again, his absence is everything.
Yeah.
And you remember him standing there in the lounge.
That's the overriding image, it really. Yeah. I'm going to go on from Doctor Who now to possible Paul Cornell projects for the future.
Oh, I think I've done all of them, haven't I?
Well, a couple of questions,
right,
if you don't mind. The Doctor Who spin-off Torchwood. Have you ever been asked to contribute for it?
No. But they only think year by year.
Right.
And Russell knew I'd be doing the 2-part this year.
Is it something you'd like to do?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Sounds good.
Yeah. And apart from next year's secret 2-parter,
Sea Devils.
Yes, like those for Sea Devil, you heard it here first. Are we likely to see more Paul Cornell episodes in future years?
Well, it's not to me, but as you know, I'm never going to say no. But I've been thoroughly cosseted by the production team about this 2-parter. We've had some lovely back and forth, some lovely meetings, some new script editor Lindsay Alford, absolutely wonderful. Helen's sort of hanging around over her left shoulder, just popping in every now and then. Gary Russell's also around, which makes it a lovely, lovely team. And I've had some lovely meetings about this, and I have rarely had a more smooth and easy script writing experience than this time around. It's been great.
Wonderful. Excellent. Well, I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to see if anyone's got any questions for Paul.
Hello.
From the floor here. Anyone?
Come on.
Come on.
What's that, something to ask you?
Well, bye.
Paul, just to ask, were you pleased with the way that Father's Day actually turned out on screen?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
On the day of screening, on the day it was broadcast, I filled my little flat in my hometown with everybody I knew in the town, to the point where people had their asses sticking out the window, and the little old ladies who lived next door really liked that. on the night, I got called up by my dad, who went, well, I liked it, but that Pete Tyler, I mean, I don't know. What an example of a father he was. And he didn't realise it was based on him. and by Terence Dick. So I thought he was splendid. He was absolutely wonderful. And by Russell. And it was just really, really nice to share that with people I knew. Yes, I was tremendously pleased with how it turned out. Goodness.
How does it feel like you made a million grown men cry?
Not the first time. I think my "Who Shot the Sheriff" line probably did that as well. But I love the fact that it's so emotional. A lot of it is it's a real flattering experience to see actors pushing stuff that hard. Billy Piper and Sean Dingle. When she puts her hand up and says, "My daddy," I'm in floods of tears.
Yeah.
And him looking out the window, Joe Ahern keeps you on his face for such a long time. And he's doing the narrative on his own, that actor, with his facial expressions. You watch him realising and understanding. And to do that in modern television, to have faith in the power of an actor to convey the narrative without, as happens in many lesser shows, somebody added on in the dub afterwards going, have you just realised that you have to get under that car to save the world? Oh, I see you have. I'll go now. Bye. But, it's tremendously flattering to see actors taking it that seriously. Billy does the comedy really well as well. Her stuff about the Bermuda Triangle, for you there is like the Bermuda Triangle. I love the little snap she puts into that. Those were the last things I wrote for the episode that Russell said at the last minute we could do with some jokes. So I went through and dropped some comedy in through it. She does it really well. And Joe creates some jokes on his own. Like when you cut to Chris talking to the baby, "You're not going to end the world, are you?" And you cut to the baby going, "Ooh, scary man." Always gets a laugh from every audience I've been with. Nothing to do with me at all, just Joe deciding that would be a nice frame to show. As I say, team game, and I had a really good team.
Wonderful. Any more questions?
Were you actually on set at the time?
Yes. I was on set on November the 23rd for my TARDIS scene on the anniversary of Doctor Who. The 20th anniversary of Doctor Who, I was with the Swindon local group of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society watching the 5 Doctors. And this particular anniversary, I was watching my TARDIS scene being made. And I was there for that. I was there for Pete deliberately throwing himself under the car. And for the TARDIS scene, there are the writer's traditional chairs, which are 2 plastic chairs way in the corner of the room, because there's nothing for a writer to do on set. And you're supposed to go along, spend an hour telling the actors you're all doing very well, have lunch, and then go home. And that's fine. That's the nature of the game. It's the director's baby then. There's nothing for you to do. We got there early, had a wander around the TARDIS. The TARDIS is fantastic. Back then, rather appropriately, the TARDIS interior was in Newport, and all the other studios were in Cardiff. And it was a big warehouse with a kind of wooden hemisphere, with one orange segment cut out of it, and that's the TARDIS console room. And we got to look at the console close up, and it's covered in fine detail, just in case a director ever wanted to get right up against it with an actor. You would see little post-it notes with tiny maps and formulae on it. Wonderful, wonderful piece of proppage. And so anyway, myself and my wife are in traditional writer's chairs far in the corner of the room, and Chris and Billy appear on set. They run over to us, they grab us out of those chairs, they hustle us across into the middle, into their chairs with Chris and Billy written on the back, and then they go and play the scene in front of us. Bless them. Absolutely wonderful. Billy is one of the loveliest people on earth, especially. In all the read-throughs, you know that she knows who Third Accountant is, she knows the gossip and the lives of everybody in the room. I'm always blown away by her professionalism.
Good ambassadors for the show as well, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And her going on about Doctor Who magazine on Jonathan, that's so sweet. But and I was there also for Sean throwing himself under the car. The sign outside of the church. One of the benefits of being married to a would-be vicar. My wife is going to be in training to be a vicar. Is that we had a particular kind of prayer book on that sign that only was used from 1985 to 1988. And we always wanted a close-up of the sign so some vicar could write into the Radio Times and go, I see that you have very well done your research about... But never got close enough for that to happen. And we named a vicar. The vicar who gets eaten by the reapers is the Reverend Simon Holmes. Because in all the signage inside of the church, it's his name on the signs. And they did some wonderful signage, the BBC Props Department. Jumble sales and all sorts of things. You could only tell it wasn't real because it had the Reverend Simon Holmes on the bottom. That level of detail, it's tremendously flattering. When you see a team playing that hard for you, it's good.
Do you have any mementos from like the vase or anything like that?
No, I don't. There were 12 vases, and they did the breaking of it in one take. I really could have got one of the other 11. But, my monsters were entirely computer generated, which is such a pity because I always wanted to be, photographed with my, with monster.
They'll bring out little action figures.
Oh, I'd love that.
Any more?
The Pete Tile action figure with a car, Throw him under the car.